Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today for this Redline comparison test, I've got two of the most sleek styled family sedans on the market, the 2020 Hyundai Sonata and of course the 2020 Mazda 6 Signature. Now the Sonata was all new for 2020 while the Mazda, that's been around since 2014. So in today's comparison, I've also brought along my friend Keith, who was also helping me with the Volvo versus Subaru comparison test, and we're gonna find out which one of these two sleekly styled family sedans is actually the best pick. So to kick things off, let's talk about the design of both of these family sedans. Now, the Sonata, like I said, was all new for 2020, and this limited trim, I actually really think is probably the best color option with this dark blue. Keith, would you agree with that?
Yeah,
it's definitely a car that a lot of people have said looks kind of like a catfish. Like the front fascia, of course, has those really interesting light designs with this LED light that kind of goes here into the chrome strip. You've got full LED headlights on the Sonata, and then of course you've got the newest Hyundai grille. Now Keith, you said you actually preferred the look of the Mazda, correct?
For me personally, yeah. Even though it's an older design, I think I just prefer the Mazda. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure why. It just calls me a little bit more.
Yeah, so the Mazda got a pretty significant refresh a couple of years ago. This design's been out since 2014. It was very sleekly styled back then. I definitely think that the Sonata looks lower and wider versus the Mazda. So I think that's where the Mazda is starting to show its age, but I still think this is one of the sleekest styled sedans you can buy today. And just like the Hyundai, Mazda gives you full LED headlights as well. Neither car, however, gives you LED fog lights. Did you notice that?
I did. It almost seems like fog lights are going away.
Yeah, I don't like how the trend of manufacturers are getting rid of fog lights. I think that that's something that they should consider keeping. But the Hyundai's grille is definitely a lot bolder and like wider versus the Mazda. So I think the Mazda's is a little bit less offensive, the styling.
It's more traditional.
Yeah, it's going to appeal to more people. This is more controversial, but I think that's what Hyundai was going for with the look. Now, the one thing I think the Mazda has beat for me are the wheels. I don't like the wheels on the Hyundai.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the wheels on the Hyundai.
Well, they just look very small. They're an 18-inch wheel, but they kind of look like a 17-inch wheel.
Yeah.
And I think that Hyundai is probably saving a nicer wheel for the N line, because remember, this has a 1.6 turbo, that's a 2.5 turbo, so they're very different in powertrain specs. Now, looking at the Mazda's wheels, these look like 19-inch wheels in comparison, and they actually are, because they are 19-inch wheels, but they also just look great. I think that it goes really well with the body lines. Both cars are actually, I want to ask you first, which one do you think is the longer car?
Ooh, just by looks.
Just by looks.
I think the Mazda looks bigger and longer overall.
So they're actually about the same size. They're both around 192.5 inches long. But the Hyundai kind of, the Hyundai looks lower. They both also have the same 111-inch long wheelbase. So they're practically right on top of each other, but the Hyundai has a huge advantage in the fact that it has a panoramic sunroof. You can't even get that on the Mazda, which is a shame. Mazda doesn't do a pano roof yet really on any of their cars. Now, at the rear, a lot of people have definitely said that the Hyundai has some looks of like a Civic and a Lincoln. Do you see that a little bit?
I definitely see that. However, driving behind a few of these more recently in the limited trim, it grew on me. I wasn't a huge fan of it at first, but it looks different and it catches your eye and it's sleek. So it's growing on me.
Yeah, so it also has full LED taillights, the turn signals are LEDs, and then Hyundai puts these little exhaust tips at the bottom. The reverse lights are at the bottom. They are just an incandescent design. So this is a very unique look. I think Hyundai's done a pretty good job. Now the Mazda's look in the rear is pretty traditional, but I think that it's also very sleek.
I feel though that it is kind of aging now. Like, I'm kind of tired of seeing design in the back of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a LED combination rear taillights as well, but I do like the dual exhaust outlet that they put on this. But remember, this has like an extra 80 horsepower over the Hyundai. So until Hyundai comes out with an N line, the Mazda is definitely the one that's going to win the drag races.
Yeah.
All right, so now we've moved on to the interior, and let's first start off in the Mazda, because Mazda very much likes to tout out that their cars are luxury cars. Remember, this is like Mazda Premium, and the Signature version of the 6 is like the highest spec model you can get. So Keith, What are your first impressions of the thing? Because I love this interior color combination.
I love it too.
Yeah, it's like a white leather with the black, and it's got the genuine wood trim and the metal trim. This looks like a luxury car in its overall design, and it's amazing because Mazda has kept this interior looking very fresh. But there's one like sore part about this interior, and it's that head unit there.
Yeah, I know. If they changed this and modernized the infotainment, this car would be perfect.
Yeah, well, I mean, even look at this thing. It's got a 360 camera, which is nice, but the resolution looks like it's from 2010.
It's a little grainy.
It's very grainy, and I just think it looks terrible. I applaud them for adding it, but I just think that, you know, it's a generation or two behind now. The funny thing about this infotainment system, it's a touchscreen, but only when you're stopped. Like when you start moving, the touchscreen goes away, and you've got to use this rotary control dial
Safety
here.
first.
Yeah, and that's because Mazda, they don't believe in touchscreens. Like their newer generation 8.8-inch screen isn't even a touchscreen at all. So this is the old one, but what they did add last year is Apple CarPlay. They finally added Apple CarPlay. As you can see, the CarPlay actually looks pretty good. I actually think it looks fairly nice.
Actually, yeah, I was surprised when you clicked on that. It looks way better. Like the resolution even looks better.
It looks better than the Mazda system. And like even if you pull up like Waze, for example, it actually looks pretty decent. So I'm pretty pleased with the CarPlay. They added this last year, which is nice. Going back to the Mazda heading, because look at how old that looks.
Yeah.
it looks very, and then look at the Mazda GPS. This is a TomTom based navigation system. It just looks old. It also takes forever to start up. I find that every time I'm in like a Mazda product with this head unit, it takes forever for it to actually boot up. So that's kind of frustrating. So this system here definitely needs to be redone. It's a 7-inch screen. It's looking a little bit small, especially when we hop into the Hyundai. But in terms of the rest of this interior, I mean, you have like suede on the dash, on the door panels.
Nice.
You've got
metal accents here.
Yeah, like the metal, this like the wood, the stitching here. It's like soft touch everywhere. Like this car for me screams luxury car. And what I also love is Mazda added some upscale features on the signature trim. It's got a heads-up display. It's got cooled seats, which the cooled seats in this car work extremely well.
Let's test them.
Like you can hear the fan when they come on, but they just are so cold.
Whoa.
You feel how cold they are. Because like I've tried the cooled seats in like a Honda Accord, they don't even work. Like they don't feel cold whatsoever. And
it really
these
comes
just
to the back nicely too. A lot of cars, it seems like it comes to the seat bottom more so than the back.
And that's where you get all sweaty, is like on your back.
Yeah, usually, I guess depending, but like. That's great. It's nice and even.
Yeah, and I also like the way the dials look here for the dual zone climate control. You've got also heated seats. You've got a heated steering wheel, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's very easy to use.
Right. In terms of the driving position, like I can get comfortable in this car fairly easy. It comes standard with all the Mazda safety tech in this car, although Mazda's safety stuff doesn't work quite as well. Their driver assistance stuff, like the lane keep assist, it's not quite as good as the Hyundai's, which we'll talk about that later on in the test drive. The wheel also tilts and telescopes, which is nice. The gauges here, they look fairly nice, but they're also traditional looking. The tack or the center speedo is actually digital, while everything else is kind of a little
like that.
Yeah, it's more traditional looking, but you'll see in the Hyundai it's very different. In the Hyundai, it's a little bit more, or a lot more modern. What do you think of the seats in this car?
They're comfortable. They're comfortable. I do notice that the seat cushion it's a little bit stiffer than average, but I'm still comfortable.
Yeah, no, I think these are actually the premium like Napa seats, the Napa leather seats versus
the leather feels good.
Yeah, and like even like you have leather like extending over here on the center console, and then down here you've got a traditional shifter for the 6-speed auto, which this is down 2 gears compared to the Hyundai, but Mazda always likes to say that their 6-speed is just enough gears. And then this car has a Bose premium sound system with, I believe, 12 speakers. Let's try out the stereo system really quick.
It's pretty good. It's not overly punchy with the bass, but the highs are really clear, and yeah. Okay,
and this is a Bose sound system. You know what they say about Bose?
What do they say about
No highs, no lows must be Bose? Is that what they say? Yeah, no, I think it sounds great. I mean, just like 10 years ago, if you look at the mainstream family sedan segment, they put crappy sound systems, and they called premium. Actually, if you look at an Accord, they only label it as a Honda premium sound system, which isn't all that great. So, so the fact that Mazda puts a very good sounding Bose system in here, it really is nice. Really, the only thing that I'm sad about this interior, like two things: there's no panoramic roof. We just have a standard sunroof.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
And then the infotainment system, I just want it to be a bigger screen. Why not? But let's hop into the Hyundai and see what you think of that one.
Yeah.
All right, so now we have moved over to the 2020 Hyundai Sonata, and I let Keith sit over on the driver's side because I want to see what your first impressions are, because he actually hasn't been in this car yet. He was in the Mazda earlier. What are your initial impressions? Does this feel more luxurious, about the same, less luxurious?
I don't think it feels more or less luxurious, but it feels more modern.
Okay.
Obviously, look at the infotainment and the...
Yeah, so compared to the Mazda, we've got a full digital 12-inch display there, which is optional. This is part of like the limited trim. And then we've got a 10.25-inch display here, and you can just see, like, this is very similar to what you find in some luxury cars with the two digital displays. And I know you like the traditional look of the Mazda's gauges.
I do.
What do you think of these digital ones now?
You know what, though? I like these a lot, too. Well, I feel like you can customize this.
Oh, yeah, so check this out. We go into sport mode here and look at what the gauges do.
Well, that's fun.
And actually, that reminds me a lot of like an Acura RSX Type S.
Yeah, Acura vibes for sure.
Yeah, like it's a really cool design, and they have these really cool little graphics when you're switching between the modes.
Yeah,
so
that's neat.
So that's something that you could, really have fun with, and I'm happy to see Hyundai, doing something a little different here, because no other vehicle I think in the segment has a full digital display, not in the mainstream segment.
No.
Now, when I first did the Hyundai Sonata video, I said that the CarPlay was annoying because it didn't do full screen. Hyundai actually emailed me after that video and told me that you can do it, and I found the setting in it, and voila, here is the CarPlay in full screen.
Beautiful.
It looks fantastic. Now, I will say the Mazda doesn't look bad, but I mean, come on, a 10.25-inch screen. I mean, pull up the Waze and look at this. It looks fantastic. This is exactly what people want to see, is like this full digital display. So I think that Hyundai has done a really great job. They're killing it with the infotainment screen and everything else with this interior. Like, I like the way the home screen looks over here. The factory embedded GPS also looks pretty good. I mean, they've had this for a while, but it definitely is a little easier to use. It also boots up faster. I noticed that this just boots up a lot faster. It's not super slow like it is in the Mazda. And they also have these cool little things where you can do these sounds of nature.
Okay.
For like a soothing, calming environment in your interior whenever you have that rough day at work.
I feel like that would make me go to sleep, though, while driving.
Which is, yeah, I could definitely see that. That would, I mean, I guess it's cool that they have that. You also have a lot of interchangeable lighting in here. There's LED lighting that's underneath here at night where you can change the color and whatnot. So there's just a lot more of a modern feel to this in cabin. And then look at the materials in here. You kind of have the same kind of the stitching, although there isn't quite as much leather like on the center console.
Yeah, that's where it feels a little bit less luxurious, I guess.
Yeah, so Mazda definitely got that feel right. I mean, it's not bad in here, but it's not quite as expensive feeling. The window switches, I think, feel a little bit nicer in this car. They have a more tactile feel versus the Mazda. What do you think of the push-button transmission selector?
Okay, I'm not so sure how I feel about it, because they literally put so much piano black right where your hands go. Okay. And so that makes me a little bit... I don't know, my OCD, that would drive me crazy because I'd be wiping it down. Not to mention all the little swirl marks that you're going to get. But it's clean, it's pretty. So put it in reverse, because I want to show everyone the difference in the backup camera. Look at that. Ooh, look at that reso. That resolution is exactly what I expect in 2020 versus the Mazda's like 2010. So kudos to Hyundai, and then look at all the different views they give you here as well. Yeah, wow, like that is curb so view clear. So you don't curb your wheels. That is so good. Yeah, so Hyundai is killing it with the infotainment technology. The push-button transmission selector, I could see why some people are like, I could take it or leave it. This car also has that Schmattpark feature too. So you've got the key fob here, and you can literally park or parallel park it and just pull it forward and back, kind of like a Tesla, or BMW also offers it as well. They've got that funny commercial. I'm probably mispronouncing Schmattpark or something. I'm not saying it right. But you also have dual zone climate control. The cooled seats in this car, how do you think they work compared to the... I've had them on and you can feel them.
compared to
they're working. They're not nearly as powerful as the Mazda.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They're still cold though, but they just don't blow as much air.
Yeah, I also think that the way that this works, it's like a toggle. I think that's a really interesting design versus just a button. You also have a wireless phone charging pad over here, 2 USB ports, and the seats. What do you think of the seats in this thing?
Comfortable.
They're pretty comfortable. They don't feel quite. They feel a little more wide versus the Mazda 2.
Yeah, they're definitely not. They don't hug you quite as much. But you know, that's a personal preference. Some people like a seat that's a little flatter and you can spread out a little more. I guess.
I mean, the Mazda feels sportier because the seats definitely hug you, while this car doesn't. You know, it's not really trying to be sportier. The design's definitely different, but when we go into the driving scene, we'll note that.
This is interesting too, the steering wheel.
Yeah, what do you think of the design?
It's the 4-spoke.
If you think it's ugly, go ahead and say you think it's ugly.
You know, I'm kind of in the middle. Like, when I saw it in pictures, I really wasn't a fan of it, but it's okay. I mean, it's nice and thick, and I don't know.
The leather quality I thought feels really nice on it.
It's not bad, or it's not my favorite either. I do like the look of the Mazda steering wheel more, but yeah. I
would have to agree. The 3-spoke wheel on the Mazda looks better to me. It's like sportier, but you can rest your hand here, which you can't do that.
I feel like this. You could rest it here. You could even probably rest it in here. Probably.
So this could be more comfortable, like as you daily drive it, and we'll figure all that later. The panel roof above me, however, is very nice.
That's really nice. Yeah, it's pretty big too.
Yeah, so Mazda really needs to look into offering a panel roof. But the final test, of course, this car has also like a 12-speaker Bose stereo system.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and
listen.
Let's go ahead and try a song here and see what it sounds like. What do you think?
This is better.
This is
than
better.
The Mazda.
Okay.
Just a little bit. It's not like leaps and bounds better than the Mazda, but it's a little more crisp.
Okay. And I mean, they both have Bose stereo systems, so it's interesting to say that you think it sounds better. Maybe it's the position of the speakers. Maybe this one has more wattage. I'll have to look into the specs of the stereo system a little bit more. But both of them have pretty good, decent stereo systems.
Oh yeah, they're both good.
Especially for a mainstream car. Like, it really shows how much mainstream cars have stepped up their game. And there's very little reason to pick a luxury brand now, especially with all the tech that you get in these. Now, the Hyundai's back seat actually is the smaller one on paper. Hyundai says you get around 34 inches of legroom back here. 34 doesn't sound like a lot, but in the real world, as you can see when I get back here, it feels like it has more than that. I mean, it feels like it's very comparable to the last Toyota Camry I sat in. There's a good amount of foot space here. This floor is not completely flat, which is disappointing, but you get a USB charging cable there, and then you have rear seat air vents. No heated rear seats, which actually surprised me considering this is the limited grade version. If you open this up here, you can see there's an armrest with 2 cup holders, and then Hyundai gives you 1 map pocket on the passenger side. Let me hop over into the Mazda because that actually has a little bit more space. Now, on paper, the Mazda does have more space. They say there's around 37 inches of legroom, but in the real world, you can see it feels a little bit more claustrophobic than the Sonata. I mean, I have a little bit less legroom here. The floor is also not completely flat, which is annoying, but there's also a decent amount of foot space. Mazda does give you things like dual map pockets here, which is nice. The leather also feels a little bit nicer in this car. You have rear seat air vents, and then if you fold this down, Mazda does give you 3-level heated seats and additional storage and 2 USB ports in the actual center console. So in terms of premium features, the Mazda is nicer, but if you're actually looking for more back seat space that feels a little bit more open and airy, the Sonata is going to be the one that you're going to want to pick. Now, underneath the hood of both of these cars, you notice the Mazda has a prop rod. The Sonata actually has 2 hood struts that holds up the hood, so I like that nice premium touch. And the powertrains are similar because they're both turbocharged, but the Mazda has significantly more power because it has a bigger engine. Let me start with the to Mazda. They added this turbo engine just a couple years ago. It's the company's 2.5 liter, a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder Skyactiv G. So it's got gasoline direct injection with a big turbo on it. It makes 250 horsepower if you guys fill it up with premium, and 310 pound-feet of torque, which is an amazing amount of torque. It's the highest torque that you'll find in the segment. It all goes out through a one choice only, a 6-speed automatic transmission. That is down a couple gears versus most of the competition. And the Mazda only comes in front-wheel drive. I was really hoping they would offer this car with all-wheel drive. It kind of needs it. Now, fuel economy, it's rated at 23 in the city, 31 on the highway. You can put regular on it, but it will drop the horsepower down to 227. As this car sits, it weighs around 3,600 pounds. Now, in contrast, this is the most powerful engine you can get in the Sonata right now. It's a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, so it's almost a liter smaller than the Mazdas. It makes 180 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. Now, some of you may be saying, this isn't fair, the Mazda has more power. Yes, however, there's an N-line version of this car coming, which will also have a 2.5 liter turbo that should be making close to 300 horsepower. They're saying 290 horsepower paired with an 8-speed dual clutch. This has an 8-speed traditional torque converter automatic, so obviously this is the less powerful car, but we're going to keep that in mind during the driving scene. Fuel economy is significantly better with this. It's rated at 27 in the city, 36 on the highway. You can basically put regular grade in this car and it'll give you the same horsepower and torque. It also is front-wheel drive, and the Hyundai is a little bit lighter. It weighs around 3,400 pounds. Okay, so to start off the driving scene, I'm having us drive the Sonata first because it has significantly less power than the Mazda. So I didn't want to start off with your expectations too high, which is actually opposite what we did in the Volvo and Subaru video, because the Subaru actually had more power. So we'll start off in the Sonata because Hyundai would probably say it's unfair considering the N-line version of this car is not out yet. So we're going to take a right here. But what are your first impressions of this thing, just driving?
Really nice, really easy to drive. Now that I have my turn signal on, I love this.
The blind view monitor, which...
That's really cool.
We were talking about this earlier because they copied Honda's lane watch system.
But they did it right.
They did it better. Hyundai and Kia executed it much better because it's on both sides and you still got blind spot monitoring with your cross traffic alert. Now this has a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with 180 horsepower, 195 torque.
What they use in a lot of their products.
Yep, 8-speed torque converter automatic, which is an improvement over the 7-speed dual clutch that you find in some of the other vehicles with this powertrain. Now obviously you don't buy this to go racing, but the thing about the Sonata is like it's a very good like daily. Like when I first drove this thing, like I think the steering is really relaxed, the ride quality is good. It's very quiet in here, like, and it's really easy to see out of. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's really super easy to see out of it. It's almost Subaru-esque with the greenhouse effect, at least with these pillars. The 8 pillars are very small, which I always like. I get picky about that when cars have really thick pillars because you can't see out of them very well.
Yeah, and they even gave you this little side mirror here in front of the side mirror to kind of give you, or this little window here to give you a little bit extra visibility. And just like the Mazda, this car has all of the driver Hyundai Safety Sense tech on it. I'll turn on the lane keep assist there. When it's like active as green, you'll feel it kind of keeping you in the lane. Hyundai's system actually works pretty well. Like I'm surprised at how well it keeps you centered in the lane, because we'll hop into the Mazda later and you'll notice that it's a little late to actually respond. Like you'll go over the lane and it'll just kind of shove you back over. It's not very refined.
Oh yeah, this is impressive. You can feel it right now.
Yeah, no, for a mainstream brand, Hyundai is really impressive with their tech in here, with the screens, with the driver assistance tech, and obviously. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, what I've found with a lot of them is that you bounce around in the lanes a lot. It's like it goes the whole way over to the line and then it comes back over. And this really does keep you centered.
Yeah,
that's really nice.
Yeah, no, it is very impressive, and it makes driving easier. I think that's the point. If you're going to give us the driver assistance tech, it needs to work well. Because if it doesn't work well, I'm just kind of like, I'm going to turn it off and I don't really want to use it. So right now, this has the top engine for the Sonata. The base engine is also a 2.5 4-cylinder with 191 horsepower. This has a little less horsepower, but more torque, traditional 8-speed automatic. I'm going to switch the drive mode here into Sport for you, Keith. And let's give it the beans here and see what it does.
Got my Acura gauges now.
Yes, your Acura Type S gauges.
All right, here we go. Oh, we got a little slide. All right. That's not bad for a little 1.6.
Yeah, so I would say the 0-60 is like just under 8 seconds, like 7.8, something like that.
I'm surprised we slid sideways a little bit.
I saw that you had to overcorrect the wheel. There was a little bit of torque. I don't know if it was torque steer, but
No, it wasn't.
okay, but it has 195 torque, so it's gonna do that occasionally. You also get paddle shifters, of course, on the wheel, so you can control the 8-speed auto. What do you or if you let's try out the responsiveness of the transmission. Just kind of put your foot down here and see what it does.
Without paddles.
Without the paddles,
All
yeah.
let's see. It's a little delayed.
Okay. And remember, this 8-speed has been tuned to give us the best fuel efficiency as possible. Like, this is rated at 2736 mpg. It's better than the Mazda, but the Mazda has a bigger engine, more horsepower.
Yeah, no, it fits this car well, though. I mean, you're not going to be driving it like a race car.
No,
so
no.
You don't really need that.
Yeah, this is pretty adequate power for most people want, and I actually haven't driven the base 2.5. This has more torque than the base 2.5, and I think that's what's more important for people. Like, you want that low-end passing power.
Yeah, it's much more usable.
Right.
In everyday driving.
Yeah, because you're not going to drive this thing and rev the crap out of the engine all the time. Now, how does this thing feel in terms of sportiness? Does it actually feel a little like it has confidence in the corners a little?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't taken it around too hard of a corner yet, but you know, it's not leaning too bad. It seems pretty solid.
Yeah, and remember, there's an N-line version coming that's going to have 19-inch wheels, like a stiffer suspension. It'll also have an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. So that's going to be really impressive. I think they've got
excited for that.
Well, I think they've got a really great chassis here. Like, it's going to be the basis of a really great, sporty car or sporty sedan when that version comes out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can tell this platform's going to handle it very well. One wheel peel.
Burning rubber in the Sonata. No, I mean, I think this powertrain is pretty adequate. I think it's going to suffice for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it will too. Yeah, this is more than enough power, honestly, for just everyday driving, commuting, whatever. And there's enough passing power too. There's a little delay. All right. It feels really confident. Cornering hard like that, and accelerating. It felt really confident. I'm impressed.
Yeah, and that's the thing is Hyundai used to be very behind in terms of handling, in terms of steering feel, in terms of throttle response. It really shows that they've hired, the right engineers from BMW and Audi, of course. Albert Bierman really knows what he's doing with chassis tuning, so this car is very impressive. It's not, I praise Hyundai not because they pay me like a lot of you will say in the comments, but because they really are turning a lot of their products around.
They deserve a lot of respect, I think.
They do.
What they've come from and what they are now, they really do. They deserve everything that they've worked for.
What do you think of the quietness in here, like the road noise, engine noise?
It's really quiet.
Yeah, I believe the Limited has a little bit thicker glass to kind of make this thing a little bit more quiet. But I mean, when I first saw this thing, it felt like a Genesis. Like it's very much like looking like their luxury division and whatnot. But you know what? Mazda sets the bar pretty high. Like the 6 has always been a very sporty car, and it has like an extra 80 horsepower over this. So let's hop into that car and compare. All right, so having just hopped out of the Sonata and into the Mazda, that screen obviously so much smaller.
I was just gonna say I really missed it.
But Keith actually likes the frameless rearview mirror.
I do. That's nice and modern.
It is very premium looking. And this is actually Keith's first time driving the 2.5 turbo combination, which is actually going to preview the Mazda 3 with this powertrain because we've gotten confirmation that Mazda will be adding it. This car definitely has a sportier vibe for me. I've driven both cars, so I'm gonna let Keith drive and let you guys see his raw first impressions on this car. But what do you think?
Already just cornering a little bit, I can tell that the seats are holding me in place better.
Yeah, they definitely, the bolster's more aggressive.
Yeah. And
the handling wise, like the suspension, the steering, what do you think compared to the?
Can't comment yet.
Okay. And that's fair. We need to have a little more time in the thing. But what about visibility? Which one do you think has better visibility?
I think the Hyundai is easier to see out of. This feels more like coupe-like.
Okay.
More swept back. And I think maybe because it's missing the little that little window near the mirror, and Yeah, it's a little harder to see out of.
It's a little more claustrophobic in here. It's not quite as roomy, which is interesting because both cars are the same size on the outside, but that's always been a Mazda thing. Mazda is not very good with space on the inside. Their cars always feel a little bit more cramped, a little more cozy. I personally don't mind this. I guess
I don't mind it.
Yeah, because we're shorter guys. Like
Yeah, I'm not a big guy. So.
yeah, so that's why I'm kind of like, it's fine. But if you're like over 6 feet, you're gonna appreciate the Hyundai's feel with more an open airiness. But it's also kind of like that because the Mazda doesn't offer a panel roof. It doesn't let in quite as much light in here.
That does make a difference too. But also, I think with this contrast and like it's very low and wide, it feels more like a sports car.
Okay.
Sporty. I don't want to say sports car. It just feels sportier.
Right.
So, sometimes people like that feeling. More so, or they like to feel a little cozier.
Well, that's something that Mazda drivers love is the cars feel sportier, they feel cozier, they feel like they're slightly above other mainstream brands.
Yeah.
Except when you look at the infotainment system in this car. Because aside from the Carplay, which looks good, you go to the Mazda system and I'm just kind of like, this is... Oh, look, actually, I can't use it as a touchscreen right now because we're moving. You see that?
Safety.
So I have to use the controller here to go back to the Mazda system. Super annoying. Like, oh, but once we come to a stop, then it starts working.
Just got to make sure you do complete stops and stop signs, and then you won't have a problem. I'm gonna go. All right.
So that was your first time flooring the 2.5 turbo. What do you think?
That was fun.
Yeah, so remember, this car is only front-wheel drive. They don't offer the 6 in all-wheel drive yet. The next generation 6, which Mazda's already talked about, will be rear drive, if you can believe it, with an inline 6. But here, let's put the transmission in sport mode here. Let's pass this slow rev and see what you think again.
Okay, you can tell the transmission's dated. It's not bad though. It's just you can just tell it's an older style.
So I noticed that it feels dated because the spacing of the gear ratios is very wide. Like it kind of will knock the engine out of the meat of the power band a lot, and you have to put your foot down hard to get it to downshift. And it also doesn't shift as fast as the Hyundais, which these are both torque converter automatics and whatnot, but the engine in this car, what do you think of the sound? And feel free to give it the beans again if you want to test it out.
It just kind of sounds like a normal 4-cylinder.
Right.
Not exciting.
The thing is if you thought this car would be like the return of the Mazda Speed 6, you are mistaken.
Yeah.
It is not the return of the Mazda Speed 6. It is just a more powerful, torquier Mazda 6 because the base 2.5 without the turbo is gutless in this car. So this is much improved. I mean, 250 horsepower on premium, 310 pound-feet of torque. It's the torquiest engine in the segment right now.
A lot of torque.
It is a lot of torque. It's held back by this 6-speed auto. Like if it had a snappier transmission, like a dual clutch, it had all-wheel drive, this could feel more like a sports sedan.
There's a little delay. Torque steer. All right. Definitely had to grip the wheel pretty hard there.
Okay, I mean 310 pound-feet to the front wheels. We knew this was going to happen. But it feels noticeably faster than the Hyundai, would you say?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So yes, this probably puts a bigger smile on our face, but it's comical because of the torque steer and the wheel spin. And we like the better acceleration, obviously.
For sure. But I mean, I don't think it's quite as comfortable to cruise in. Like, are we going right here? So it's a little bit noisier. I'm hearing more road noise and stuff, so it's not going to be as comfortable as a cruiser.
Okay, so it's a less refined car, which is typical with Mazda vehicles. They tend to be a little more visceral, which is what they wanted and such.
Yeah.
But I think that the 2.5 definitely makes the Mazda 6 a more appealing car. I just don't know. Like, there's some things about this car that shows its age. It's a little more cramped in here. The screens aren't as nice. The noise is a little bit higher. And I'm just not sure that the 2.5 really shows off how good it is when it's paired with this 6-speed. It's held back a lot.
Yeah, I think with a new transmission, it would be, which I'm sure I would think Mazda has in the works.
Mm-hmm. But also, did you notice when you floor this thing, it will short shift like at 5,500 RPM?
Yeah, it doesn't rev out, and maybe is that because of the torque band?
It's because of the way this engine is tuned. It is tuned for all the mid-range grunt. And it really, if you use the manual mode, for example, and keep it revving past 6, all the power's gone. It tapers off completely, so Mazda basically just has it shift early.
Oh, okay, it didn't even let me.
Yeah. It's well, that's because they know that the power is gone above 5,500 RPM, so they're just kind of like, no, we'll just have it short shift and whatnot. But it feels good. The mid-range of this car is very strong.
Yeah, it's torquey.
But it really gets you wondering because, you know, that Sonata N-Line, which will compete with this, will have 290 horsepower and it'll have an 8-speed dual clutch transmission. I drove a prototype of the car when I was in Arizona. The transmission wasn't complete and the exhaust noise wasn't right, but I found it to be very impressive in my initial drive. But I think we just like how this thing burns rubber so easily.
She's fun.
Now here's a question for you, Keith. Because you drive an 08 TL Type S, does this feel faster?
It's weird because the power feels so different the way it's put down. Like, you know, you get that mid, all that torque in the mid-range in this car, and then my car, you really have to rev it out to get the power. That's kind of hard. I feel like it's similar.
Okay, which one has more torque steer?
They both have a lot of torque steer. I'd say they're about even.
Okay. Yeah, because they're about this. Your car is, if you can believe it, Keith, your TL is actually 3 inches shorter than this car.
I believe it.
Okay.
This car feels longer.
Okay.
Yeah, the TL really isn't that big of a vehicle.
So clearly the Mazda is the winner here in terms of acceleration, but we do need to comment at how well they've kept this car fresh over the years. I mean, it's gotten some steady updates. I mean, there are a couple things obviously that make it feel old, but it's still a very appealing choice in the segment. And the thing is Mazda doesn't sell very many of these. Last year, they only sold about 21,000 in America.
Oh, man.
If you compare that to a Camry, they sold about 350,000 Camrys.
Yeah. That's actually a selling point for me, though. I like to drive a car that you don't see.
That you don't see very often?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay, that is. I agree with that. The Hyundai, in contrast, sold about 87,000 last year. And what's crazy is you can literally see how sedan sales have been dropping over the years because Hyundai used to sell about 250,000 Sonatas at one point in 2012.
Wow.
Yeah, so sales have dropped tremendously, but that should help with the new generation Sonata because that'll help boost some sales again. But the 6 has always been a very low volume car for Mazda. They've never managed to sell all that many, but it's still very appealing. So we've got to pick a winner between these two. But before we pick a winner, I'm going to talk about the price because they both start around $24,000 for a base model. The Mazda is $36,700, while the Hyundai is $34,500. There's a $2,000 difference. Asterisk here, the Hyundai has significantly less power. Whenever they come out with the N-Line version, it'll be closer in line with the price of the Mazda. This is about what to expect for a fully loaded version of a mainstream family sedan. So of course, I'm going to put you in the spotlight, Keith. Which one do you like more?
Okay, for me personally, the winner is the Mazda 6.
Okay.
It would fit me a little bit better. I just like the sportiness, the 2.5 turbo kind of got me, and I love the interior. So that's the one I would go with, but honestly, they're both great cars. I also really like the Hyundai too, but if I was to choose between the two, it's going to be the 6.
Okay. So I actually will agree with you. I will pick the 6 here as well. I was going to pick the Sonata. I like the interior of the Sonata. I like the tech. I like the features in it. It's cheaper, but I'm power hungry, so I will pick the Mazda. But I will also say that I'm going to redo this comparison when the N-Line version of that car comes out later this summer. Hyundai has been a little tight-lipped. I'm guessing the coronavirus pandemic has delayed the launch of that car, but that'll have 290 horsepower over the 250 in this one because the Mazda is a great car, but it's held back by the transmission and the old infotainment system. But I think it's still well priced. I think it's still a sleek-looking car, but Hyundai's nipping at them, and once they put the right motor in them, Mazda better watch out. There's a rear drive version of this with a straight 6 coming, so Mazda could be in for a really nice rematch in the next couple of years. But anyways, with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed our comparison test between the 2020 Sonata and the 2020 Mazda 6. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you all in the next video. Take care.